Squarespace.com is the perfect website for designing your own personal website. It's easy to use and has 24/7, 365 support. Visit squarespace.com-nerdsoup and receive 10% off your first subscription. Also, visit thenerdsoupblog.com for more NerdSoup content.
You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth!
Welcome to NerdSoup's Top 10 Movies of the Year. It's been a great year for movies, but people seem to forget that since everyone is screaming about Star Wars. Well, I'm here to remind you that not every great movie needs a $200 million budget. Although there are several films on this list that have a $200 million budget, but there are several smaller films of all sizes, genres, themes, and artists, all using the medium of film to tell their stories. And here are my 10 favorites. After officially leaving behind two blockbuster franchises, Guillermo del Toro decided to make a film more in line with the interior decorating of his living room. The Shape of Water is a modern retelling of a tale as old as time. But this version of Beauty and the Beast doesn't have talking clocks and candles. It's the dark side of fantasy that Guillermo loves to explore from a human perspective. The story's spin is similar to Pan's Labyrinth's take on Alice in Wonderland. The movie takes place during a time of warring tension. The U.S. government has captured an exotic humanoid creature from South America, and they keep the creature as a prisoner for future dissection and study. This humanoid creature, otherwise known as a merman, forms a special bond with a mute woman who works in sanitation. She cleans his cage, feeds him eggs, plays him music, and the two fall in love. It's a little strange, but we as fans are not strangers to Guillermo's style, and as expected, he weaves this bizarre love story to near perfection. These two outsiders and their allies fight against the ignorance and chauvinism of their time, and together they try to find their own little strange happy ending in a world filled with tension and mistrust. It may not be Guillermo's best movie, but it's another great addition to his unique and bizarre filmography, and one of my favorite films of the year.
To become an Avenger, are there like trials or an interview?
Just don't do anything I would do. And definitely don't do anything I wouldn't do. There's a little gray area in there, and that's where you operate.
Oh.
All right?
People often talk about superhero fatigue, but after The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I was suffering from Spider-Man fatigue. I just don't care about Uncle Ben anymore, man. He's not an inspiration. He's a meme. But Captain America Civil War gave us the best on-screen Spider-Man yet, and I was back on board with the Spider-Man franchise. I'm such a pushover. The best decision Marvel made with their reboot was bringing Peter Parker back to his roots. He's simply a kid trying to balance the priorities of living a double life, one as a superhero vigilante fighting monsters and supervillains, and the other as a teenage nerd trying to pass his chemistry test and find a date. These middle-class roots make Spider-Man relatable to anyone who's dealt with the horrors of being a teenager. No kid has superpowers, but we've all dealt with the anxieties of being 15. And Homecoming was a near-perfect introduction for the future face of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
No.
A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Confined to the backyard of an affluent Eastern estate, the claustrophobic nature of Get Out makes its message impossible to ignore. For an hour and 45 minutes, Jordan Peele is placing the audience in his shoes, giving us his experience of how it feels to be black in America. Straight from the source, it's a movie about racism, but not the stereotypical Southern racism that we've seen so many times in movies. It's about the subtle prejudices that some people carry unknowingly. Those seemingly harmless feelings that can manifest into something ugly ugly and terrible. The story is the classic tale of a white woman taking her black boyfriend to meet the parents. Guess who's coming to dinner with a horrific twist? Seen through the eyes of star Daniel Kaluuya, we know right away that something is off at the Armitage estate, but the mystery takes its time in unraveling. Throughout their visit, we experience the feeling of helplessness when it comes to one's own mind and body. The themes of Get Out have been thoroughly dissected and studied, but on the surface, it's an original, funny, unique horror movie that doesn't rely on jump scares for its thrills, and that might be its greatest achievement.
I'm about to get naked, so no bacon. I said no bacon!
Logan Lucky was 2017's version of The Nice Guys, and while it's not as clever in its narrative, it's every bit as fun. The story is about two brothers, down on their luck, who plan to rob the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Known as the neighborhood dunces, the Logans are out to prove that one doesn't possess luck, but he simply creates it. The subsequent shenanigans following their outlandish robbery are hilarious and surprisingly touching. Logan Lucky's momentum is provided by the get-rich scheme, but the true crux of the film is letting go of the past and allowing yourself to live for the future. The script is good, but the performances give the film its awkward charm. It's one of the best ensemble casts of the year, but Daniel Craig absolutely steals the movie for me.
I am incarcerated.
Yeah, we got a plan to get you out.
Steven Soderbergh is the master of heist filmmaking, and Logan Lucky might be his best score yet.
Who is child?
If every blockbuster was made like War for the Planet of the Apes, then there would be no more blockbusters. Really, War for the Planet of the Apes is an indie film in digital makeup. People criticized it for being too slow and too boring, and there's not enough action. Director Matt Reeves made the bold decision to take his time with this movie. It's not moving at the speed of a modern-day summer blockbuster. War develops its characters at the expense of several opportunities for action set pieces and explosions. In fact, the action scenes are few and far between. The focus is on the characters and how war can change your motivations and fundamental beliefs. Up until now, the character of Caesar has really been the perfect hero. He has led his people bravely and truthfully towards a future of peace. But now this prolonged war has made him vengeful. Andy Serkis may never be nominated for an Oscar for one of his motion capture performances, and he may never give the proper credit to the animators who bring his characters to life, but his role as Caesar has been some of the best work of his career, and he gives his finest performance in what I consider to be the best addition to the Planet of the Apes franchise.
Hayes, why did you put up these billboards?
My daughter Angela was murdered 7 months ago. It seems to me the police department is too busy torturing black folks and eating Krispy Kremes to solve actual crime.
Written and directed by the Irish Aaron Sorkin, there isn't much subtlety to Martin McDonagh's 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. The title, the main characters, even the words on the billboard, everything is right there in your face. Frances McDormand plays anti-hero Mildred Hayes, who is often in the face of several characters throughout the movie, a woman trying to find justice for her murdered daughter. Emphasis on the word anti-hero. It's very easy to sympathize with Mildred's search for justice, but some of her actions are questionable, and not everyone is going to agree with them. The story revolves around the contentious message written on the billboards by Mildred, and everyone has an opinion on it. It's kind of like any controversy that happens in the real world. Everybody is just screaming their heads off, and it's just like, shut up. The best arc in the movie belongs to Officer Jason Dixon, played brilliantly by Sam Rockwell. I don't want to spoil his character arc, but I'll tell you this much. He's a stereotypical racist dickhead cop with a surprising amount of heart and charm. Really, he's just the definition of an anti-hero. You're rooting for him, you're rooting against him, you're constantly flipping back and forth. He's Missouri's Jamie Lannister. Woody Harrelson's character, Sheriff Bill Willoughby, plays the role of mediator between Mildred and Dixon. He kind of represents the audience. He can't necessarily see both sides of the story, but he's willing to understand them. That understanding is something that we severely lack in today's society, and that's really what this movie is. It's dealing with a lot of themes and problems that we see in 2017, and if Martin McDonagh wasn't such a great writer, this story could have been a bit of a disaster. The script is very assertive, but it never comes off as pretentious or preachy. Its contentious nature doesn't overshadow the witty and emotional narrative.
Dunkirk, ready on the stern line.
What are you doing? You know where we're going.
Into war, George.
I'll be useful, sir.
Dunkirk tells the incredible true story about the evacuation of the British Army from France during the early days of World War II. 300,000 troops stranded on the beach of Dunkirk and facing certain annihilation. The miracle of Dunkirk is a story about finding pride in losing. Filming almost the entire film with IMAX 70mm cameras, Christopher Nolan crafted what is, in my opinion, the greatest war film of all time. Dunkirk isn't bogged down by awkward and unnatural character development often found in other war films. Instead, the focus is on the mission and the countries involved. Standing alone in the fight against fascism, the film's true protagonist is England, and how she faced impossible odds with incredible vigilance. Watching this film on New York City's IMAX screen was one of the most incredible cinematic experiences of my life. Nolan captured shots and sequences that were never before seen on film, simultaneously pushing the boundaries of filmmaking while also delivering the best film of his career. Please don't scream at me in the comments. I know you all love Memento and The Dark Knight.
Just go to City College. You know, with your work ethic, just go to City College and then to jail, and then back to City College, and then maybe you'd learn to pull yourself up and not expect everybody to do everything.
Lady Bird's authenticity is found in its autobiographical nature. This is the movie Greta Gerwig was born to make because it's her story to tell. The title character, Lady Bird, played by Saoirse Ronan, is an ambitious, eccentric high school senior who has her sights set on the future. She has a strained relationship with her family, specifically her mother, who clearly loves her daughter but is concerned about her daughter's future. It's the same concern that every parent has for their child, encouraging them to follow their dreams but also wanting them to be realistic. Nothing kills ambition like a reality check. What I love about Lady Bird is its ability to subvert the cliches of its genre. Of course, there are several coming-of-age tropes. It's part of the genre, but Lady Bird's relationships feel real, and the characters feel independent. They have their quirks and different personality traits. Not every character is speaking with the same voice. It's a credit to Greta Gerwig's writing. The best example of this is the relationship between Lady Bird and her mother. The mother-daughter relationship is the heart of this film, and Saoirse Ronan and Laurie Metcalf really bring this complicated and frustrating relationship to life. Two characters that are so alike yet so different, both wanting the same thing but have different ideas of how to get there. As a viewer, it's frustrating to watch because you're constantly agreeing and disagreeing with both characters. Overall, Lady Bird is a funny, charming, and quirky addition to the coming-of-age genre.
What is she?
Beneath the stain
She's like you.
of time,
Very much like you.
the feelings.
17 years in the making, Logan is the film that Hugh Jackman has deserved after all these years of playing Wolverine. Through all the ups and downs, the good times and the bad, Hugh Jackman has stayed committed to his role, and Logan was the perfect send-off for the veteran actor. For both veteran actors. In a film where the main theme is confronting your mortality, these two heroes have never been more vulnerable. Weakness is something that we are not used to seeing in our superheroes. It's the main reason why Logan feels like a Western with superhero characters instead of just another superhero comic book movie. It's not necessarily the anti-superhero movie that I've been waiting for, the one that completely subverts the cliches of the genre, but Logan is the closest thing we have to that. It's amazing how grounded Logan feels. This is why I think the R rating was so important. You can still make a great movie with a PG-13 rating. I think The Dark Knight is proof of that. But at the end of the day, we live in an R-rated society where people die and they curse and they drink and they make mistakes. The character arc of Logan lends itself to the R rating because he's had such a fucked up life. The addition of X-23, played by Daphne Keane, forces Logan to confront his legacy and once again become the hero that he's famous for being. The relationship between Logan and his newly discovered daughter can be frustrating to watch. Laura is a child who is forced to become a killer, similar to her father, but she is still a child all the same. Of course, Professor X is the one who encourages Logan to be that guiding light for Laura, but it's easier said than done. Wolverine essentially has to be what Professor X was to him in the first X-Men movie. Even in X-Men Days of Future Past, he says, "We sent the wrong guy back," when he's trying to reach out to the younger Professor X. Wolverine doesn't know how to play that role, and it's interesting to watch that dynamic of father and daughter. Really, it's just like a really fucked up version of Lady Bird, if you think about it. But overall, this is the best comic book movie we've seen since The Dark Knight, and put aside the comic book genre, it's just a great movie on its own. The fact that award season is coming up and Logan is flying under the radar is just total bullshit. The performances by Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, Daphne Keane playing with the legends in her first go. Please, somebody, recognize this movie for the masterpiece that it is. I'll take a Best Supporting Actor for Patrick Stewart, okay? I'll just take that.
Every civilization
was built off the back of a disposable workforce. But I can only make so many. Happy birthday.
2017's masterpiece. The best thing about Blade Runner 2049 is that it doesn't just continue the story of its predecessor, but it expands on it. Denis Villeneuve builds on the foundation set by Ridley Scott instead of just living on it. The original Blade Runner is famous for the subgenre it inspired and the questions it asked. The main question being one of humanity's oldest. What does it mean to be human? The biological and psychological differences between man and replicant are further explored in Blade Runner 2049. Taking place 30 years after its predecessor, the story follows Officer K, played by Ryan Gosling, a Blade Runner working in the futuristic city of Los Angeles. After discovering a secret that could break the world, Officer K is forced to find the truth about his own mysterious past and the secret he has discovered, and whether or not his life contains meaning, regardless of his biological makeup. While all the performances are great, the best performance is given by Sylvia Hoeks, who plays Love, the replicant enforcer working for the powerful Wallace Corporation. And I have to mention, Harrison Ford probably gives his best performance in years. It's really cool to see him coming back to franchises that he made so popular back in the 80s and really embrace those characters that made him an icon. And of course, Denis Villeneuve continues to cement his legacy as one of the best filmmakers of the 21st century. In my opinion, he's batting 100. He's 7 for 7 with a couple masterpieces under his belt. His films are often perfectly paced and the plot never feels rushed. He's a very careful filmmaker, and it's no different in Blade Runner 2049. And it's no knock against the story to say that the film is technically superior to its narrative. Roger Deakins, if you don't win the Oscar for cinematography this year, then I don't know what to tell you, man. This is the best looking film possibly of all time. And when you have the narrative, you have the technical aspect, and you have the music, everything is flawless. The acting, the story, the writing, that's the definition of a masterpiece where you can't find any faults in a film, in my opinion. Blade Runner 2049 is the rare sequel that surpasses its predecessor. To pass the original Blade Runner, it's a monumental task that I think Denis pulled off. And to me, it's the best film of 2017. Well, there you have it, my top 10 movies of the year. If there are any movies you feel I missed or left out, leave them in the comments below. The best part about making these lists are all the recommendations I receive from fellow film lovers. So please, comment away with your top 10 lists. Give me suggestions from foreign films, animated films, films that flew under the radar that maybe I haven't seen. Oh, and Merry Christmas. See you in 2018. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. And I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, whether if you're a small business owner, a writer, a critic, a blogger, a musician, you need an online home base for your fans to find you. The best way to get started on your online career is by building a personal website where your fans or customers can easily access your product, and Squarespace is the perfect place to get started. You don't need any prior knowledge of coding or web design. Squarespace does all that for you. They have templates, designs, different fonts, and graphic images. If you can imagine your perfect website, then Squarespace can help you build it. And if you click the link squarespace.com/nerdsoup, you will receive 10% off your first subscription. So go ahead and get started on building your perfect site.